Welcome, everybody, to the Winner's Circle Sports Betting Channel. I'm your host, Ross Benjamin. I'm back again on Tuesday, September the 26th. And this time I'm joined by two veterans of the sports betting industry, Mr. Chip Chirimbes and Mr. Paul Bovi. If you watched last week's show, it was a popular one as it was the most viewed show on our channel last week. Over 5,500 views. Thank you, folks, for all the support you've given us over the years, and especially so over the last couple months, where a lot of you have subscribed. And if you haven't, it's absolutely free to do so, folks. You'll see a WC logo right there in the bottom of the video box. If you're watching on your PC, just click that. It's absolutely free to do so. There's no strings attached, no hidden agenda. And if you're on your mobile device, also that black subscribe button right underneath. Click on that and you'll be all set to go. And you'll be privy to some of the best sports betting information on the internet today. And in my opinion, and I'm biased, the best sports betting podcast on the internet today. All right, Chipper, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful. If we can play baseball every day, things would be great. A couple of disappointing games this weekend in football, Clemson, one of them. And we're looking to bounce back with a big winner this weekend.
Paul Bovi, he's in Mexico, right by the ocean, folks. He lives large, he plays large, he is large. How are you, Mr. Bovi?
I wouldn't say I'm large at 147 pounds, but I'll agree on those first two. But it was a great Saturday, 4-1 on the five selections I gave out. Sunday, a little bit choppy. I think we went 3-1. Unfortunately, lost the Carolina game, but you can't win them all. So we're looking for big things this weekend, and looking forward to a great podcast here with two great guys.
Thank you, Paul. When I say large, the latter large, I meant it in your personality and your status in the sports betting industry, not your body type. So let me clarify that, because it's obvious you're not a large guy. And for that matter, I don't think any of us are. I'm only 5'7". Chipper, he goes all of 5'7", right?
Hey. 5'8.25" according to the U.S. Army.
5'8.25". How tall are you, Paul?
I am 5. Well, I was measured at 5'10", but I'm figuring the years may have shrunk me a half an inch or so. So call it 5'9.5". And Chipper, if you were 5'8.25", you're probably 5'7.5" right now.
That was military gave me that. I've been telling everyone I was 5'9", 5'10" all my life.
Yeah, he was in World War II. So any event.
All right. So I was going to say I wear lifts now just to cheat a little bit. I got these great shoes and they boost me up.
Come on.
You know, yeah.
You don't need it.
So we're not starting a basketball franchise here, but we are pretty good sports handicappers. The last I checked, some interesting stuff that we saw in the NFL last week. A couple of coaching decisions that really had people scratching their heads. And by the way, folks, we're going to be covering 3 games today. Paul would be looking at the much anticipated matchup between the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. Chipper's going to look at the game in London between the Falcons and the Jags. And I'll be looking at the AFC North battle between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. But these coaching decisions that we saw in the NFL this week, and again, Brandon Staley, I don't know what he's thinking. I think he's way too out of bounds with the analytics in the sheets that he goes by. But you're up 4. You're on your own 24-yard line, Paul. It's 4th and 2. You got a 4-point lead with less than 5 minutes to go, and he goes for it. He doesn't make it, and he gets bailed out because Kirk Cousins throws an interception. And then the other point of conversation is Josh McDaniel, the Sunday night game. He opts to kick a field goal down 8 late in the game with 3 timeouts in his back pocket and deep in Pittsburgh territory to cut it to 5. Why? I don't know. You guys tell me. Paul, I'll start with you.
Well, on the first one, it reminds me a little bit of what I saw many years ago by a Dallas coach by the name of Dave Campo, and he went for it like repeatedly in his own territory, doesn't get it. And some of these coaches just like to play hero ball. And if it works out, he is a hero. But if it doesn't work out, the criticism is going to come down on him. So do I blame him 100%? No, he's trying to win a football game, and he doesn't want to put it back into the opposition's hands. Now, on the latter example, I just am, it's a head scratcher. I actually was not watching the game. My cable had gone out momentarily, and I checked the box score later, and I scratched my head, and I could not believe what I saw. I did a double take. I'm like, this, because I saw that length of the field goal was 26 yards. So there's just no rhyme or reason to the decision. And it's worthy of termination, in my opinion. It's just you can't. Nobody can wrap their arms around that I could see, and it's impossible to embrace. So certainly, it leaves him open for criticism, and it's going to go on for quite some time.
Yeah, so there you have it. There's Paul's side of things in terms of what he saw and what he read. But, number one, Chip, I think Josh McDaniel is proving once again that he's a better offensive coordinator and not a very good head coach.
But,
and the one last thing, Paul, what I would say in your defense of Brandon Staley is there was still 4+ minutes to go, and the opposition still had 3 timeouts. So that first down wasn't going to ice the game or leave them with very little time left on the clock. They were still going to need an ensuing first down after that. So I can't look with Brandon Staley, Chip. I can't defend the guy because I've seen him do this time and time again. Get lucky or cost him the game. Anyway, Chipper. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Staley's done some incredible things. His decision kept him out of the playoffs last year, and the Raiders get in. Like you said, even if you get the first down, you're still at your own 25, 26-yard line. I don't understand that, but the Raider thing was, to me, was unfathomable because they're down 8 points with 2:20 to go. His position was that, well, we'd have to score ties. So we'd have to score a touchdown now, and we'd have to convert a 2-point extra point try. But you know what, Ross? What he's saying is it's easier for me to score a touchdown if we get the ball back than it is to make a 2-point conversion. I don't understand the thinking behind that. Is that easier to score a touchdown?
Wasn't it a 4th and 1 play, Chip?
What was that?
Wasn't it a 4th and 1?
Yeah, and they had a 5-yard penalty, which brought them back, but they still should have gone for it because of the situation of the game. Sure. Some of these people just don't have any common sense. I don't know if they get brain freeze when they get out there, and their decisions are just outrageous. The Staley, I mean, he's done this time and time again. And like you said, analytics are analytics, but common sense is another thing to win the ball game. And I just didn't see the Raider play. He's trying to get the ball back, and then he has to score a touchdown if he gets the ball back. It's not like he was able to kick a field goal if he got the ball back.
Right. What he's saying is it's easier to kick a field goal, stop a team on their ensuing offensive possession, and then score a touchdown as opposed to scoring a touchdown and attempting a 2-point conversion and being successful. Okay.
I just want to say something on the Staley subject. I'm not a supporter of Staley. In fact, I'm not a supporter of any of the Chargers coaches in years past, and I've watched this team pretty closely. But sometimes you want to put destiny in your own hands. They really couldn't stop the Vikings. The Vikings actually on Sunday had a running game that was completely non-existent in the first 2 games. I think the prior game, they had ran the ball 17 times for 41 yards. It just wasn't there, and they really couldn't stop the Vikings. So even though they still had 3 timeouts, I understand that the Vikings did. I think he wanted to just try to bleed the clock down. So I understand the rationale behind the decision, but I think you can make a definite case on the other side, and it's a stronger case, but I still can understand exactly what he did.
Well, let me ask you this. In your estimation, how many of the 32 coaches in the NFL beside himself go for it on 4th and 2 from their own 24 with a 4-point lead with less than 5 minutes to play? It's
not this answer is not a one size fits all answer because every case is going to be different. If you cannot stop the opposition, if your defense is on their heels, I think you're going to be a little bit more aggressive. So it's hard for me to answer the question, but under the same exact circumstances, I'd say you have about 10%, if that.
Yeah, I would say he's and again, it's not being combative or argumentative. In my estimation, he's the only one who does that in that situation. And to counterpoint what you're saying about the Vikings running game, you kick the ball back to them with less than 5 minutes to play. They do have 3 timeouts in their back pocket, but it sort of closes the playbook a little bit when you're down 4 and you need a touchdown.
Right.
So your running game, in my estimation anyway, becomes a moot point. But again, we could discuss this till the cows come home, and it's a very objective conversation, and it's interesting to hear all of our takes in that regard. College football, Paul. Florida State and Clemson. Chip just mentioned it. Again, Dabo Swinney played it a little conservative, thinking he had a field goal in his pocket as a lock with an inexperienced kicker. And then the Notre Dame debacle. 2 classic games, but again, questionable decisions. And then you wonder, the last 2 plays for Ohio State, they had 10 guys on the field, Notre Dame. Isn't somebody in the coaching staff upstairs assigned to just count the players you have on the field? I don't get it. But anyway, Paul, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I on the Clemson game, just making an observation, all I could do was feel a lot of pity for that kicker, because these kinds of moments stay with you for the rest of your life. And unfortunately for him, he missed it, and it didn't work out in their favor, and he's going to have to deal with that going forward. And it was a great football game, and Florida State prevailed. So let the show go on, and hopefully Clemson can bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, and you make a good point. Scott Norwood of the Buffalo Bills. Yeah. I mean, he's been living in obscurity for the last 30 years ever since that.
I was at that game. I was at that game, and I was sitting there. And I actually, that's kind of a sore point. I wanted the Giants to win, but I had the Buffalo team total over 21.5. So I was kind of like, all right, what am I rooting for here? And I says, is it money or fanhood? And I chose the money. So when he missed it, I was bummed out.
Yeah. Well, you were bummed out.
Not I.
A lot more Jack Daniels went down the hatch after that one, for me anyway. Chipper, your thoughts on what we just talked about?
My thoughts on the Clemson game is that Dabo Swinney, like you said, when 2 minutes ago, a minute and 58 to go, all of a sudden he threw the ball, and I'm saying to myself, they're on like on a 12 or 15-yard line, get the touchdown, go for the touchdown, don't play conservatively because anything can happen. And he did. He played conservatively, and they missed the field goal. And it's, I think you have to play for the touchdown, and they just didn't. Once he got inside that red zone, he was just concerned with controlling the ball.
Yeah,
and it cost them.
It sure did. I mean, and you can't argue with the success he's had at Clemson, but now you're looking at a Clemson team, and they're going on the road to take on Syracuse as a 7-point favorite. And how do they recover from that? That's the question mark. I mean, it's either going to go one or two ways. They're going to look like a lion and blow the orange out and say, we don't care, or it's like, we got 2 losses already. We can't win a national title. Yep. We're brokenhearted over last week. So we'll see. That's an interesting topic of discussion for another day. Anyway, let's get to our games at hand. And Paul, I can't wait for your take here on the Bills in Miami game. Buffalo opened as a 3.5-point favorite. They're down to 2.5. The total in this game, 53.5. Miami puts up 70 points last week. Boy, oh boy, what an impressive offensive show last week. And they've been very impressive offensively since the start of the season. Nobody's talking about Buffalo, but they put up 37 and 38 themselves in the last 2 weeks. Anyway, Paul, it's not important what I think. It's important what you think in this matchup.
Well, I mean, you can make a case that Miami's offense is prolific, robust, and I might agree with all those adjectives. However, I think Sunday was more a case of Denver being completely inept. I watched the replay of that game, and they were just free rolling. They didn't even punt the football until I think there was 7 minutes to go in the game. It was 56-13, and I think at that point they were just trying to bleed the clock, and they weren't even having success doing that. And Denver's defense is problematic. They gave up 27-39 to Sam Howell, who in his other two games was, I think, 34 of 68 or something, 34-62 for only 360. One of those games being against the Bills. I think the Bills, you got to give them credit for what they've done on defense thus far this year. First game against the Jets, they gave up 312 yards, but 83 of those were a run by Breece Hall. And then in the next two games, 240 to the Raiders, 60 yards on the last drive, meaningless. And then 275 on Sunday to Washington, where they sacked Sam Howell 9 times, hit him 15 times, and on the last drive, 42 yards for the Commanders to kick that meaningless field goal and avert the shutout. So they have quality linebackers in Bernard and Matt Milano. Mostert picked up the slack for Waddle on Sunday, who was out. Tyreek Hill, 9 catches, 157. I just think the Bills are playing solid football right now. And I think the light bulb went off, and we discussed this in Josh Allen's head, and that is to avoid the contact, get rid of the ball, slide when necessary. And I think the Bills are playing good football right now. And guess what? Miami still can't stop the run. Bills have a running back in James Cook. He's run it 44 times for 267 yards, along at 36. And I think they're going to be able to run the football against the Dolphins, control the clock, score some points, hold Miami in check, as New England did, and win this football game by 6 to 9 points.
There you go. So Paul likes the Buffalo Bills. He says late at 2.5. I don't know what they are on the money line, Paul, but I'm assuming that if it's a reasonable price, that's the route you'd rather go. But we'll see what it is around game time. But being as it may, he's predicting a 6 to 9 point win. So if it gets up to 3.5, I'm assuming, Paul, that's still the direction you want to go.
Yeah, I like them.
I don't see it going up. I just think that the public is seeing what Miami has done so far. And I just don't see Buffalo being a public side on Sunday. Anyway, Chipper, I mean, some pretty good observations there from Paul. If you remember right, Tua last year against the Bills, that's the game he was knocked on his behind, got up, staggered around, and inexplicably they let him back in the game. But that was the beginning of the end in terms of his concussion problems last year. Your take, because I know you got an interesting one, and I know that you don't like popular sides. And
last week I did. We had Buffalo, and they were a big winner over Washington. Boy, I loved that game all week, Ross. You know what happened there. You know, this contest here, we have the Bills, who got crushed their first game, and they really showed a lot of character by coming out, not only winning the next time out, but last time against Washington, the way they dominated. Allen's been great. The last 2 games, like you said, I think he got a wake-up call the opening game against the Jets. And Miami offense has been awful prolific. But I would have to say, Paul, I will play against any team that scored 70 points the following week. So that would be my first instinct on the game.
And what's the record? What's the record of teams after they've scored 73? I think you have to go back to the Washington Redskins in 1948 to
championship game.
And that was a postseason game. That was a postseason game. That was a championship game. That was a game, I believe, Sammy Boss said,
that day.
You guys fumbled on the opening snap. You think it would have changed the outcome or the complexion of the game? He said, no, we would have lost 73-7. So They lost that game 73-0. And I remember, and I'm old enough to remember back in 1966 because my dad was such a huge Giants fan.
Right.
And I know yours was too, Chip. And Paul's a big Giants fan. When the Washington Redskins at that time beat the Giants 72-45. My father had the under. Anyway, I learned a valuable lesson that day.
I was going to Giant games in 1966. I saw Gale Sayers. I saw Norm Snead, Fran Tarkenton, Bobby Douglas. All these greats from years past. But I can't say I do remember that game. Probably because I wanted to block it from my memory, since I'm a longtime Giant fan, going to Yankee Stadium way back when. So long live the New York Giants, although they don't have the greatest team right now. But I think we're an up-and-comer. So,
Paulie, I'm surprised I missed you, because I was a Giants season ticket holder as well, and I missed that game, but I remember it because I had a Pop Warner game that day, and we came off the field, and they gave me the Giants score. I was dumbfounded. And the Washington in those days was able to put up some points, and I think Y.A. Tittle might have been the quarterback, putting them up for the Giants.
It was actually Norm Snead, and before we lose,
was it?
Yeah, before we lose all of our clients and all of our audience, because the demographics between 35 and 55, let's move on to another topic, and that's going to be the Baltimore and Cleveland game. And I'm going to be covering that for you. Baltimore at the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland right now a 2.5-point favorite. The total in this game is 41. You look at both of these offenses, and they're pretty balanced. And also, both of them are extremely good at time of possession and stellar defensively. You look at Cleveland, number one in the NFL right now through 3 weeks, 36 minutes and 56 seconds average time of possession. They averaged 35 rushing attempts per game. And even without Nick Chubb last week, they ran the ball 32 times and they passed it 33. So, and they still... they didn't run the ball as effectively as they did in the first 2 weeks, but it shows their identity, and they're not willing to deviate from that plan. And Baltimore, number 8 in the NFL right now at 32 minutes and 5 seconds per game. They're number 2 in third down conversions at 51.1%. As we all know, when you're good in that area, it certainly helps sustain drives and puts the time of possession most likely in your favor. But they're going to have a little bit of an enigma going into that game next week, as the Cleveland Browns, number 1 in the NFL on third down defense at 19.5%. Cleveland's defense, I don't think they get as much love as they should. I mean, we hear about all the good defenses, the San Francisco 49ers and such in the NFL. But this Cleveland defense through 3 weeks, they've given up 32 points. And think about this, folks. 14 of those points came via Pittsburgh Steelers defensive touchdowns. So really, their defense has only allowed 18 points. In their 2 home games against Cincinnati and Tennessee, they've allowed 3 points on each occasion. They held Cincinnati to 142 total yards. And last week, they held Tennessee to just 94 yards. And the Baltimore defense in their first 3 weeks, they've allowed a little over 18 points, less than 300 yards per game, and they've sacked the quarterback 11 times. So I'm looking at this one to be a knockout, drag-out type of affair. Both meetings last year went under the total. I'm looking at somewhere around a 17-13 game, 16-14 type of game. I'm going Baltimore, Cleveland under the total of 41. Paul, any thoughts?
I have no faith in Baltimore right now, because this was supposed to be the year Lamar Jackson was going to throw the ball more. But I think, and part of this was contributed to by Staley and Linderbaum being out, but he's running the ball. He ran the ball, I think, 16 times for 101 yards on Sunday, had the lion's share of their rushing attack. He's not getting the ball downfield. Their wideouts, I think, had 9 or 11 catches for like 80 yards on Sunday. It's Mark Andrews. It's backs out of the backfield. They don't have a potent offense. And now, of course, Odell Beckham, as expected, is on the shelf with an injury. They signed him. He was supposed to be a contributor, has not, other than the 3 catches he had, I think, in the second game. So I have no faith in this Baltimore offense. I definitely, if I'm playing the total here, I would have to side with the under. Baltimore's defense, I don't think has been great. I don't think they were great against Indy. Indy was able to run the ball. And I give the edge to Cleveland, and I would say it's probably going to head to the low side. So, Ross, I'm in agreement with you.
Yeah, well, if they can't stop the run, or they didn't stop it last week, then they'll have their hands full, even without Nick Chubb. Let's not forget. I mean, Kareem Hunt just got signed. He knows that offense. He'll be another week into his activity. The kid Ford, when Chubb got hurt 2 weeks ago, ran for over 100 yards in that game. So, in any event, Chipper, any thoughts? I mean, I think you had Cleveland along with myself last Sunday.
Yeah, I did, and their defense has really stepped up. I mean, other than those 2 touchdowns that were given up on by the offense against Pittsburgh, this team should be 3-0. I mean, they've really been stellar, and I don't see any other way to go but the under in this game. It just looks like it to me. You know, I'm not a real totals guy, you know that, but the way Cleveland's defense is controlling the ball and the way they run the ball, and like Paul said, the lack of down the field passing game for the Ravens makes me think this game should stay under the total. We'll have a hat trick, all 3 of us on the under here.
Yeah, so there you go. I'm looking at Cleveland and Baltimore under 41. Paul likes the Buffalo Bills minus the 2.5 or the money line against the Miami Dolphins. And Chipper, he likes the Falcons and the Jags to go over 43.5. Is that correct, Chip?
Yeah, I do. One of the reasons is, beginning of the year, I had said there were 2 teams I was looking to fade because the public was, just gravitating toward them during the summer. And one of them was Jacksonville. We see them get crushed by Houston last week. That was a major surprise. And the other was Detroit, who has rebounded. But I'm talking about not overall. I'm just talking about the numbers each game. I think people are going to be looking to play these teams. They played Detroit last week and they won. They won big over Atlanta. But, I'm looking for this game. I think it's a showcase game in London, and London has virtually become a second home for the Jaguars. So I think they might feel a little bit comfortable there and look to get their offense together. And Desmond Ridder has been absolutely what we expected him to be. He was sacked 7 times last week. Atlanta doesn't move the ball offensively. Ross, we talked about their great running game, and last week they were totally stifled, and to the point of where their offense did absolutely nothing passing either. Desmond Ridder completed 10 passes to his tight ends. Now, he did throw for 200 yards, so that Atlanta had 240 total yards for the game. So I'm looking for a lot of changes this week, and I think the fact that the game is in London, this has more to do with the fact that it's there than the 2 teams that are playing each other. I think they're looking to showcase this game and looking for Jacksonville, of course, to get their offense in gear. And I think this game's going to go over the total. I think they're looking to put some points on the board and not have it be a boring, blasé affair, which you find many times on a Sunday. But this is a standout game by itself in London. I think there's going to be a lot of action and a lot of scoring, and it may be, an illusion for me, or the way I'm coming up with my rationale for this, but I think this game goes over the total.
Yes, we talked about common sense earlier. Having common sense when it comes to sports betting is not always a good thing. And I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but it's honestly, folks, sometimes you have to go against the grain with your thinking when it comes to sports betting. And nobody does that more than I know than Chip Chirimbes does. But yeah, you make a good point, Chip. And the Falcons, they showed a very good running game in their first 2 games. Well, let's not forget now, Detroit has held their first 3 opponents to, I believe, 75 yards or less rushing. So they are very good against the run. But
their defense really stepped up.
Yeah. Any thoughts for you on this contest, Paul?
Well, if I was playing an over on the card, I certainly would not be gravitating to this. I'm not saying you're going to be wrong, Chip. It's just that Atlanta, they had one performance this year, which you pointed out, against Green Bay. They ran the ball. They scored. They won the game, and they piled up what 440. Yeah, 448 yards, 211, I think, were on the ground. Now, if you take a look back to the first game against Carolina, it's a miracle they won that game and scored 24 points because they had a shade over 200 yards, I think 240. And then you revert to last week or this past Sunday against Detroit, once again, an anemic offensive performance. So you may be right, and we may see the other side of Atlanta, the side we saw against Green Bay, and they may be able to move the ball, but I wouldn't be willing to make a major wager on that. And as far as the Jaguars, I agree with you. Last year, their legacy was built on the collapse of the Tennessee Titans, and that's how they won the division. It wasn't because they were great. It was because Tennessee just fell apart. So at 43.5, I think it's fair value, and it's I'm going to root for you, but it's a game I would stand back on.
It's the most illogical thing if you're going to play any side on this game.
Yeah. Sometimes, like I said, common sense doesn't prevail when it comes to sports betting. So, and I'm almost a true believer. You've made me almost a true believer of that, Chip, over the last few years. But
if the number's 44.5, that it sort of looks very attractive to play the under the way Atlanta's been playing. If it was 39.5 or 40, I would probably think the other way. But I thought the 44.5 was look, I'm stealing candy here. Oh, Atlanta can't score.
Yeah, well, the Jaguars also made the Houston Texans look like an offensive juggernaut last week with the big plays that they gave up. Yeah. Of course, one of them was on a kickoff return, but C.J. Stroud quietly has been very impressive in the first 3 games, Paul. He's passed for like 270 or more on each occasion, if I recall correctly. So your thoughts on what you've seen from C.J. Stroud so far?
I would agree with you. He's certainly been better than, Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young. So, out of the guys that came out of college, the newbies, I think he's, put on a good show, and hopefully it'll continue.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson, unfortunately, he hasn't been able to stay healthy, but when he's on the field, he's productive. So, but you know what? You could do a lot worse than Gardner Minshew as your backup quarterback. So, all right, Chipper, tell them what you might have coming up this week and how you've been doing of late. I know you said you're on a nice baseball roll. Whatever you want to share with the audience.
My 3 big games Saturday went 1-1-1 with the, we had opposite side of the Notre Dame and Ohio State game. We pushed there. Alabama was a big winner, and Clemson very disappointing. I'm looking for a Fab 5 big games Saturday, and on Sunday, once again, going to come with at least 3 that I see right now that I've singled out. And of course, my single strongest play, the thing I hang my hat on, is my megabuck play, my big game, and I'll have one each on Saturday and Sunday.
There you go. Chip Chirimbes over at gamblersworld.com. Folks, don't forget, when you purchase from any of us at gamblersworld.com, single game, multi-game, daily packages, or subscription plans of 30 days or less. If you don't win, you don't make a profit, we will credit your account back the exact amount of your purchase price, and you can use that money on anybody at any time you wish. So you get our personal guarantee there. Also, don't forget, all 3 of us, NFL annual package still $5.99, college football annual package $5.99. The combination of both $8.99. When you're dealing with handicappers of our caliber, folks, invest in this long term, because I don't care if you're the best sports bettor in the world, everybody has a bad week. So in any event, Paul, tell the folks a little bit about what's going on with Mr. Bovi and what he foresees in the future.
All right. Well, again, we went 4-1 Saturday, only frustrated with that loss by Utah State in overtime. It could have been a 5-0 week. We didn't get it, but Sunday, I think we went 3-1. We lose the Carolina game, but a lot of times in these plays, we post props. My biggest prop of the day on Sunday was Andy Dalton over 213.5, and he got well over that. I think he landed at 350 or so. We already have an NFL total up there. I'm going to have several more. And I'll have a college 5-pack, I'll have a college 3-pack, and I'll have a college single game. So get on board. We're going to win.
There you go. 2 of the finest handicappers, not only in the country, in the world, when it comes to the world of sports betting. And I say that with conviction and confidence, because I've been around these guys for a long time. And it goes for any of the guys over at gamblersworld.net. I will stack that crew up against anybody on any site at any time. I'm coming off not a good NFL week, guys. I went 1-4. Man, And that was after a 5-0 the week before. So I figure I'm going to be pretty strong this week in the NFL. On the other hand, Chip, college football, 12-1 the last 2 weeks, folks.
Wow.
11-0 the last 2 Saturdays. Major League Baseball right on a roll right now at the right time going into the postseason. 10-2 with my last 12. 43-22 since August the 4th with my Major League Baseball picks. And my ROI is always pretty good because you know why? I don't give out big chalks. You don't need me for that. Also, all sports on a 27-5 run since September the 12th. That's right, folks. It's all documented, not only at Gamblers World, but at every other site that I'm on. And also since August the 4th on a 75-43 all sports run, which is good for 64%. I don't know what you're looking for or what you expect, but I think those are pretty damn good numbers. So if you want to invest in me, you can find me at gamblersworld.com, as well as Mr. Chirimbes and Mr. Paul Bovi from Mexico. Anyway, Paul lives in Mexico. He's right on the ocean, and he's all of our envy because he showed us the view last week, and boy, oh boy, what a beautiful view it is. Chip, he lives in Las Vegas, and me, I'm in frigid Western New York as a diehard Bills fan. So I am looking forward to that matchup, and I certainly hope Mr. Bovi is correct with his prediction. Chip, there's a like button. What should they do with that like button?
They should click that like button every week.
All right, click that like button. And it's just a small token of your appreciation for the work we do on this channel, the preparedness we put in, and our efforts to make you a smarter sports bettor today than you were yesterday. I will be back tomorrow morning with Sean Higgs and Jesse Schule. Don't forget, folks, Friday we go live, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, taking all your questions and everything that you want to ask or comment on. You get your opportunity to do so live, and you'll get responses right away instead of on the archives whenever we get to it. So we look forward to that as well. Guys, thank you. Great job as always. And these guys will be back with us next Tuesday. And until then, for Paul Chip Chirimbes and Mr. Paul Bovi and Ross Benjamin, we'd like to wish each and every one of you all the very best, folks. Take care and God bless.